All right. How's everybody doing?
We're doing great, PJ.
Thank you. So, I am the only thing standing between you and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So I appreciate your time. I'll say that right off the bat. My name is PJ. As I said, I work at a small streaming company that's out of Stockholm, Sweden. You might have heard of us before, maybe, maybe not, I don't know. I've been coding for about 20 years, and that's not a super huge surprise, being that this is a tech conference. Long before that, I started messing around with computers. Before I even thought about computers, really, I learned to play the drums when I was 6 years old. Shortly after that, I started playing shows with lots of bands. A little while after that, I started actually getting into producing, and people would bring me in because I had an ear for the thing. That's a long timeline. I still play music, I still have a band, even though I'm an old person. But all of this is because I'm something called an audiophile. And if you don't know what an audiophile is, it's someone who is very obsessive about music. And I am very obsessive about music, every part of it, production, instrumentation, every type of music, every genre, everything. I want to hear it all, and that's impossible, but that's my goal. I will tell you that while most of this is based on fact, there's some opinions about music that I will not agree with you on. I will fight tooth and nail about what you like and what you enjoy, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You'll see my music preferences come out as we move along through the presentation. That said, questions that have come up when I've done this presentation before, things like, who's your favorite artist? What's your favorite album? Those are very nuanced and difficult questions for me to answer, and so we just won't do that part. So, this is just one part of the definition of what music is, laid out by a guy named Don Campbell in his book, The Mozart Effect. How many of you have heard of the Mozart Effect? You don't have to put your hands up. I can't see you. The lights are way too bright. So Don started his research in an interesting way, and like a good scientist, he found that sometimes his conclusions didn't exactly match what he expected. So he did apply the scientific method, although Don was working with homeopathic intentions. I'm not here to slam homeopathy. Whatever floats your boat is a term that's going to come up a lot during this talk. In fairness, there's a great deal written about how music can heal, and the focus of this talk is not trying to heal. That's not what we're worried about. We are looking at the scientific findings that prove conclusively that mental functioning can improve by listening to music. We're not curing anything. Like, Don Campbell really believed that he could cure physical ailments. What we're doing is measuring gains in cognition. And this is legitimate, it is experiment supported, it is science. So, Don Campbell's idea was that music could heal better than modern medicine. That's a little out there. But Don decided that he would try this out, and he decided he'd start with Alzheimer's patients, and he thought that he was actually seeing what he expected, an increase in cognitive function for Alzheimer's patients. For non-brain maladies, though, Don was totally mistaken. If you break your leg, it doesn't hear faster if you listen to music. It doesn't work that way. Why? No idea. But the question is always, what did Don play for his patients before he wrote this? Now, I already said the title of the book, and you saw the title of the talk. You've probably figured this part out. Not a mystery. He played Mozart. Don was not the first to come up with this research. He did his research based on testing. See, not just for developers. Dr. F.H. Rauscher and his team in 1993 posited that mice, and then chimps, and then humans, would perform better at tasks of spatial reasoning if they were listening to Mozart. In humans, this meant a spatial IQ score rise of about 8 to 10 points higher after listening to Mozart compared to relaxing instructions or silence. Specifically, Mozart's sonata for two pianos, K448. That is a very specific piece of music. I was going to try to play it, but I'm not getting internet streaming right now. And sometimes if you don't download your streaming music to play offline, you're kind of caught out, but it is what it is. Now, there may be some of you saying, this sounds like a load of malarkey. By the way, one of my favorite things about Biden being president, he brought the word malarkey back. Thanks, Joe. Don't care your political persuasion. We all love malarkey. I thought the same when I first heard about this in the late 90s. I was like a college student. I was like, there's no way. This sounds like complete bullshit. That said, it has been tested, retested, contested continually for the past few decades. And while some variants have changed some results, the basis of Dr. Rauscher's research has been repeatedly applied successfully. So, a set of research results, this is a definition, let me use my definition voice. A set of research results that indicate that listening to Mozart's music may induce a short-term improvement on the performance of certain kinds of mental tasks known as spatial temporal reasoning. So basically, the idea is that listening to Mozart will make you able to perform better due to your better ability to focus. That seems pretty sensical. To be clear, let's define what spatial reasoning actually means. Spatial reasoning, also referred to as spatial awareness, is an ability to understand objects in both 2- and 3-dimensional space, to use those terms to draw conclusions about them with limited information. So it's basically your abstract thought process. You are able to have something described to you, and you can extrapolate from that what goes on beyond what we just said. So, in essence, music is a stimulator. It is a stimulant. I think we all know this. You can listen to a song and it can evoke emotions. You know, the sound guy and I were talking about, the Mr. Blue Sky that was playing and how Groot was dancing to at the beginning of that Guardians of the Galaxy movement, and it makes you happy. It makes Groot happy. It makes everybody happy. It's a fun song. That's the emotion it means to evoke. But the thing is, when you have an emotion, it actually moves your brain in a direction. It gets it out of like a sluggish slump. It shakes you up. And in our cases, it can make code better. So all of this is to say, different sounds affect the brain in different ways. Harmonic music reduces dissonance, and it calms the brain, allowing the listener to perform better. Everybody with me so far? Okay, cool. I'm assuming you all said yes. So, developers, mathematicians, scientists of every shape and size were not even on the map for these researchers. They did not care about that. Their initial focus was patients with epilepsy, Alzheimer's, ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and other maladies of the brain. The fact is, when they started testing, they needed a controlled group of people without brain maladies, people without issues. And they found the music to be just as, if not more stimulating. And it was kind of one of those moments you're like, this wasn't what I was looking for, but I'm really glad I found it. So, just about everyone, not just people affected by direct brain issues, but also people not suffering in any conventional physical way. In other words, regular people, for lack of a better term. But why? So, at heart, we as coders are really doing things with words that translate to mathematics. And I'm not going to get into the whole argument about whether programming is the true math, or do you need to know math to be a better developer. That doesn't really matter anymore. We use abstraction layers to move away from the bare metal code, move away from binary. But in the end, what we're doing is making calculations. We're telling the machine to make the calculations. So that's fine. You don't need to know the math. The computer knows the math. On the other side, music is also essentially an artistic representation of mathematics as sound. Every piece of music, if you read music, starts with a time signature, which is an understanding of exactly what pace things should go. Other things will allow you to actually see things like beats per minute, or how fast it's supposed to be played. This determines the pace, the feel of it, what it means. These are all numbers that teach you how to play music. So the jump between music and programming is not a monstrously huge gap. You'll also note that many developers were musicians in their youth or are currently musicians. It's because our brain actually understands the two things in a very similar way. So, what's wrong with all this? Researchers at Harvard, Oxford, they all tried to reproduce this effect to see if it could be seen regardless of the source of music. It had been proven at this point, so this is like in the mid-2000s. It had been proven at this point that the Mozart effect, so-called, was in fact a true event. The question was, maybe Mozart isn't really the catalyst for this increased cognition they were seeing. But you'll notice that in the early 2000s, people were still focused on that. How many of you, some of you are young, some of you might have young kids. How many of you remember things like Baby Einsteins and Little Einsteins, where they actually correlated music with bright colors and it was supposed to make your kids super brilliant? I played it for my kids. I think they're super brilliant, but I'm their dad, so I mean, maybe they're not, I don't know. So at Harvard, Oxford, they're like, okay, cool, so Mozart works, we got that, done, written down, put it in stone. What about other forms of music, though? What else might give us a cognitive boost? Is it possible if the subject was partial to, say, the Bieber effect? Could a similar effect be tracked? And let's all try to control ourselves as we look upon what could have been the future of improved mental performance. Oh, that hair. Notice I didn't use a more recent picture because, things have gone downhill. In reality, however, Bieber is not the answer. I'm sorry. While being partial to pieces of music or being interested in them is important, another important part is actually the content. Not every song will get you moving. Not all of it has the right components. Often dance music or pop music is lacking in substance enough to the point that your brain is not getting what it needs to see a cognitive boost. This is the hard part. Pop music is something that often makes us happy. And I'm using the American definition of pop music. In Britain, anything that isn't classical or jazz is pop music. I'm talking about pop music, your Kiss 98.5 type stuff. What it doesn't do is it doesn't stimulate us mentally at all. It's sugar, it's candy. So when looking at cognitive development, artists like Taylor Swift and Drake proved to be about as helpful as listening to silence. Listen to silence. Please stop listening to Taylor Swift and Drake. So, the music matters. And the fact is, it's not even really what's in the music so much as what's already in our brains. The brain responds to the senses: sight, taste, feel, smell. Sound is one of the most powerful to us, or at least for those of us who can hear. Early in my working life, career, whatever, when I was about 17, I started working at a deaf school, and I learned a lot about deaf students and deaf culture. With deaf students, it was different. It's been found that they get a similar effect achieved by the sense of smell or sight. So pleasant smells, think fresh cut grass, breaking bread, pastries, something sweet, or visual stimulation, great works of art, or brilliant video montages, or those immersive like Van Gogh and Disney experiences you see all over the place. Like those cause non-hearing people to have the same cognitive benefits we can get simply by listening to a piece of music. You might have heard of things like lumosity and different things like that. They're kind of a big deal. They talk about mental elasticity as a cognitive improvement tool, which is important. Incorporating music into using tools like lumosity is somewhat the same, and you can see even a bigger benefit by putting the peanut butter and jelly together. It starts by seeing kind of short-term jumps, but over time that can increase, and you'll see more longer-lasting results if applied correctly. And I'll get more into what that means soon. That said, we are fighting an uphill battle. Our brains are constantly degrading. They are organic gray pinkish mass sitting in an organic body. They go bad, just like eggs or meat or anything that has ever lived. Because of that, your brain slows down as you age. I know that I, at my age, can't think quite as fast as I did when I was 20, but I was also, consuming 8,000 calories a day and weighed 120 pounds. We all had better days. But because of this degrade, it's not a jump that happens where you're suddenly one day I don't feel as smart as I once did. It happens each day, so it's slow to notice. Combining things like lumosity and music and working with it together, you can actually see some improvement to see less degradation over time. We need to fight this each step of the way. I know my biggest fear is that this will stop working. But it kind of fits in. Being a coder is less about the physical than it is about the mental. While the visible portion is what we do every day, like you pounding a keyboard or seeing what's coming up on the screen, like all that jazz, the majority of what we do is actually cerebral, specifically cerebral. Our brain is our most important tool. I do a lot of work with the folks at Open Sourcing Mental Health, sometimes called Open Sourcing Mental Illness. They talk about how your brain is your most important tool, but it's interesting that you won't work to fix it. Feel free to go to osmhelp.org to learn more about mental health and tech. But when you really come down to it, the code that we write doesn't just magically appear and it comes from our fingers and it's beautiful. I mean, unless you're really good, but nobody's that good. It comes from your memory, it comes from your brain. It might not be conscious, but it's something that your brain produces. Unless you're copying and pasting, in which case it comes from a different form of memory retrieval called Google or Stack Overflow. But you are essentially, when you code, you are pulling from a file system that is so much larger than any database you've ever worked with. Our brains are super mysterious and we still barely understand how they work, but like we kind of figure out things from time to time. You gotta find ways to unlock things and make them better, and music is one of those ways. So, it's important to note again, and I'm gonna say this probably a couple more times, the cognitive boost you get from music is not permanent. If this was the case, I've listened to enough music in my life that I would be the most intelligent being on the planet, if not the universe, and so would just about all of you. We would be super connected mental beings that know exactly how everything works. We don't. The effect of music on your performance is going to be short-lived as a coder. Not in the sense that how many of you read Flowers for Algernon or saw the movie Charlie when you were in like high school? The guy gets like a super pill and he's kind of has a mental disability and he takes the pill and he's super smart and educated, but then like over time, he goes back to worse than he was before. It's not gonna be like that. It's not like, oh man, this song ended and now I'm super dumb. No, it's like, there'll be a steady decrease after you stop listening, but it's not gonna go below where you started. Additionally, the efficacy of the same music repeatedly will mean the increase in the quality, the cognitive jump that you get, the quality of your code output will diminish over time. So you've got to mix it up. So this is where it gets complicated. In case it wasn't, yes, thank you for laughing. This is, when I was researching to do this talk originally, this is the most ridiculous album cover I found. I actually listened to it. It's as bad as you think. But what your connection to music, and this is the complication, it starts with your preference. You were raised in a certain culture, even if it was in the United States, we still have music culture here. Your parents or caretakers listened to a certain kind of music. There were different types of music being played at relatives' houses or churches or campfires, whatever. You were probably hearing music even if you weren't actively listening to it. But this all influenced what you listen to today. And if you love this Pat Boone album, like, own that shit. But don't, because it's bad. Oh my God. But this ability to unlock the better cognitive function starts with being able to identify with certain music. Something you associate with yourself, your personality, your upbringing, what you listen to in college, things that make you dance, things that make you happy. This means you need to be able to find music that inspires you to move forward. Side note, so before I did this, I was in the speaker room and I popped my headphones on for a few minutes and I listened to a thing. Has anybody seen the anime Cowboy Bebop? Yeah, best theme song in history. You want to feel pumped up and good and ready to go kick some ass? Listen to that song. It's amazing. But that said, finding the right music can sometimes be difficult because when you actually start to delve into what do I like, what's my favorite band, what's my favorite album, the further you go, you realize how difficult those questions are to answer to yourself, much less anybody else. And especially if you've been in a particular music groove for so long, it's hard to break out of that. So we start there though. That's where we start our analytics. We start with what floats our boat. I myself, I grew up, I was trained to play jazz. I played in a lot of punk rock and hardcore bands, like a lot. Obviously I didn't make it, or I'd be somewhere else, like on a boat on the Riviera, talking about my third ex-wife. But didn't happen, and that's okay. That was part of my exploration of music. But your first instinct when you start to analyze what you want to do to improve your code by listening to music is going to be, let me stay in my comfort zone and just cruise. And the best way to break out of this trough is to find something similar to the genre you're most comfortable with and find something slightly different. Maybe something instrumental, something without words. Let's say you like hardcore and metal. You like hard music. You like it to be, shredding guitars and drums pounding in your ears. You love that. Try this band called Caspian from Massachusetts. They're an all-instrumental metal band. They get into like dream metal a little bit, and we'll get into the whole genre thing after the talk because it's too much to talk about in the limited time that we have. But it's something. Let's say you like jam bands like Fish or The Dead. I'm sorry. Wash yourself up, put your weed away, put on some normal shoes and socks, and try instrumentals from the band Tea Leaf Green. Tea Leaf Green sounds exactly like Fish and the Dead. It's just they never say anything. So you'll be kind of in the same place. If you aren't sure where to start with Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker is one of the most brilliant musicians of all time, very tragic story, but he created the genre of bebop in jazz. He was a brilliant musician, and there's never been a period of time when I don't put on Charlie Parker and get happy. He's great for anything. If you want to break out of the rock motif, like I said, bebop, jazz, classical, old blues, soundtracks, John Williams soundtracks, always great for instrumental music, very inspirational. There's no end to the number of instrumental pieces you can find that help you make you a better coder. The most important thing is to keep an open mind. Like I said, I'm mostly an old punk fan, like I like a lot of old stuff, but when it's time to sit down and write code, Japanese math rock. Because they do sometimes have words, and I don't understand what they are because I don't speak Japanese, and that's okay. But there's very complicated beats, very complicated instrumentation. I'm a big fan of the band Toe, just T-O-E. If you don't believe me, check it out, write some code and be like, oh, PJ was right. I should probably send him some money on Venmo. If you don't think you'd like something like that, I have an interesting story, a personal example, if you will. My brother, now again, I was a punk hardcore kid. When I had hair, I had a 6-inch mohawk. It was great. Not there anymore. But my brother was a hip hop artist. He rapped. He was pretty good at it, I guess. He's my kid brother, so like I'm gonna say he was shitty at it anyway. But we had this conversation a few years ago at Christmas dinner, and he said to me, everyone has at least one song in every genre that they like. And I was like, hold up, no. And he's like, what do you mean no? I'm like, country music. I hate country music. He looked me dead in the eye and goes, Kenny Rogers, The Gambler. And I was like, son of a bitch. He's right. That is a great song. Almost like universally, people are like, I can't get behind country. Oh, The Gambler. I do gotta know when to hold him. What great advice for life. The point of this is to say, while you're striving to find music that will help you make you a better coder, never shut the door on any possibilities. A few years ago, in his South by Southwest keynote, Bruce Springsteen, the boss, and maybe my real dad, I don't know, that was a myth in my family, specifically addressed the issue of genre. This is a man who's had a career spanning the 60s, 70s, 80s, up to today. He's still putting out albums. And lots of people said, well, why did you change the style of your music? Why are so many of your albums in different genres? This is Americana, and that's rock and roll, and that's more weird progressive stuff. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, we get too caught up in what's right, and then we stop paying attention to what sounds good and what makes us feel good. And I'd add that when we feel good, we work better. So don't get too stuck on this. Don't say like, this was great, but you know, I think I can do better as long as I find the exact right, perfect black metal Finnish Eurovision song from 2006. I know I got this. Break out a little bit, mix it up. It's important that while you're seeing all this floating of your proverbial boat, to be careful of the placebo effect. It works kind of like this. You like the music you're listening to, so it seems effective, so you're reluctant to branch out. This is the perfect moment to go listen to some other genre, something completely different. Maybe, you know, Mozart has been working out for you, you've really enjoyed it, and you're like, oh, I'll switch to Haydn, what a big change. PJ said to mix it up. It's like, yeah, you didn't change anything. You're still in the same vein. Go listen to like Don Caballero, which is an experimental post-hardcore jazz band. Mostly instrumental, but sometimes they say things, but they're in English and I still don't understand them. But finding new music is the key to all of this. And just like working on a project over time, like it can cause stagnation. You're working on the same code base again and again and again. And eventually you're getting mentally constipated because you're like, did I do the thing? Everybody's been thinking about doing the thing. Did I add an interface? Did I just write a SQL query? What am I even doing anymore? The same thing can happen with music. Listening to the same music all the time can mean you aren't expanding your mental capabilities. You're not improving your cognition as efficiently as possible. So, take time when you're working on a less time-sensitive project or in your personal time to explore other forms of music. branch out to other genres. The key to unlocking those cognitive abilities is being able to find the right combination of tunes that works for you. You ready? Here comes the product plug. Everybody ready? Spotify mixes can be great for this. I don't know how many of you use Spotify. I just assume, because I can't see your hands, it's all of you. And if not, you're signing up now so PJ can keep his job. But it's actually, their algorithm is actually very good at saying, hey, every week I'm going to give you a 30-song playlist based on what you listened to for the last week, but not any of those artists. All something in the same vein, but a little bit different. They also do a thing called daily mixes, where you start with like your top 5 songs, and it slowly changes to things you might not have heard before. There's so many great exploratory tools that you'll find these things that were tangentially related and actually continue to improve what you're doing. There's also plenty of resources in the world for finding good music. You know, I mentioned Spotify's Discover Weekly. It's like my favorite thing. Like, I wait for Monday when that comes out. I'm super excited. And when I took the job at Spotify, I was like, as long as I'm allowed to finish my Discover Weekly before the end of my workday on Monday, I will take the job. They were like, that's your only qualification? I'm like, no, I also need healthcare. I live in America. But in all seriousness, like, this is my favorite thing. Pitchfork used to be a magazine. Now it's like an online website. But it used to be great at finding new music. It's a little hipstery, so you might be like, I've never heard of any of these people. That doesn't mean you shouldn't give them a listen. They usually post like a video or two of the latest albums coming out. You'll find some gems there. There's also a thing called Turntable FM, where you can jump on with your friends, and like you play a song, and then they play a song, and then somebody else plays a song, and you clap for them, and you give them like fake internet points and stuff, and you get to hear new music. I also recently came across an app called Music League, and everyone knows how much I love this because I was telling everybody at the drinks last night about Music League and how much I really want to do it. It's fantastic. The way it works is kind of like fantasy football, where there's a theme, like the 1960s, and you find a song that you think is really cool from the 1960s, and you add it, and so does everyone else in the league, and then you vote and give points to everyone but you. It's kind of fun. You can also check out the music subreddits. It is Reddit. You have been warned. Like, they can be hit or miss. Sometimes there's subreddits like listen to us or listen to this or under 10K, which could be great or terrible, and that's why they're under 10K. But give it a shot. There's also musicforprogramming.com, which is a site dedicated to providing a mix of tunes that help aid focus and concentration when developing. It was developed by this guy, William Clifford, who saw a previous version of this talk years ago and built the site and continues to update it to this day. There's over 70 playlists on this website for you to check out. Also, earlier, you might have been in Homer's talk. He's right over there-ish. It's kind of bright, but there's nothing wrong, and you can always trust music by developers for developers. Homer did a great job, and we talked about it a lot last night. He lays down sweet beats specifically to enjoy when coding, or just to chill out to. So it's very relaxing, and that's all part of the cognitive boost. The more relaxed you are, the more benefit you gain, the easier it is for us to do our jobs. A little note on safety. Safety, and to a lesser degree comfort, are actually important in this exercise. This is going to be a small PSA about how important it is to protect your hearing through all of this. I mentioned earlier I was a drummer. I've been playing drums since I was 6 years old. I have an issue called tinnitus. How many of you know what tinnitus is? It sucks. There is a constant low-level C ringing in my ears at all times. I can't get rid of it. It's like being tortured. You should do your best to protect your hearing. And I know some of you are like, I'm young, I'm in my 20s, how bad can it be? It can be bad. There are times when my hearing actually goes out and I just get a big wah in my ears, and it just stays that way for like a half hour. I now wear earplugs, which just kind of makes it worse, but it doesn't make concerts better, but it does protect my hearing. Protect your hearing. Generally, the best way to listen to music for long periods of time, and I'm talking anything over 30 to 45 minutes, is not using earbuds or earpods. It's a terrible way. They are generally made of hard plastic. They are one size fits all. Unless you got expensive and got yourself ear molds made, good for you. They're not very comfortable over time. The safety issue really comes in though, when you see the volume go up and all those high tones start blasting against your eardrums. you are actually doing damage to yourself. And you will see me occasionally, I will wear AirPods every once in a while, earbuds every once in a while. It's convenient, I get it, they're very portable. They're very bad for you. You are taking the sound and injecting it into your ear, which is not a place it's supposed to be. Over-the-ear headphones at a moderate, non-invasive volume are the best way to go. Studio quality headphones, and I'm not talking about Skull Candy or Dr. Dre's Beats. Those are shit. Often, studio quality headphones will give you like the compression and sound quality to enjoy the music without hurting your ears. I personally use a product called Urban Ears. They're super comfortable. They're kind of dorky looking. They kind of look like, remember when they used to check your hearing in grade school and you'd be like, that's what they look like, but that's okay because they're actually protecting, they're cushioned with probably fake leather. It's definitely not leather, they're not that expensive. But like they sit on your ears comfortably, they don't press your head, they don't compress it. They can also daisy chain so you can share music with other people, which is nice. I highly recommend them, but find what's comfortable for you. I know that headphones that work for me don't work for my son. He's got a big head with small ears, and I have like a small head with big ears, but it doesn't work out the same way. Find what's most comfortable for you, but if you can, avoid earbuds. There's also the social issue. Some folks will worry about sitting and coding with headphones and music's blasting and something will put you off interacting with other folks if you're still working in an office or even if you're just walking around your house. This might partially be true. It kind of depends on you as a person, but it's also true that when we're most productive in a non-pairing situation when we are heads down and not interacting much in the first place. When we are pairing, it's still possible to have music. Maybe not headphones, but something on a speaker that's kind of low level in the background, something that's not going to be disturbing, not bother other people that are around you, but it's still possible. I personally, since I've worked from home for the past 13 or 14 years, I actually continue to play music at a low level while I'm in Zoom meetings. No one needs to bother that. But back to the important stuff. So, well, the RIA isn't cool with it. It's important to share. I'm sharing the facts about headphones with you, some music tips. I'm not advocating piracy here. I do not advocate pirating music. Artists deserve to get paid. They work very hard to make these things. And many of them, a vast majority of them, do not make a lot of money. But wouldn't it be cool if you found something that noticeably motivates you to write better code if you shared that information with someone else who has similar musical interests, and maybe they don't have similar interests, but you could get them into this? Essentially, it's kind of like being an open source engineer, except with music. You're sharing something, what you're doing with the community. It's little things. Shout out like, yo, this is my album of the day. I've been listening to this all day. It's super awesome. You should check it out. Why not share the success we have in making ourselves better at what we do? Why wouldn't we do that? And for the love of all that you hold dear, youngsters, make a mixtape. Now, not literally, because you're going to have trouble finding tapes because it's a big hipster thing again. Like people really like making tapes. Good luck finding a player, but they make tapes. But make playlists and share them with people. You can do this on just about every streaming platform. And it isn't just something you do in an attempt to gain the attention of that certain someone or someones, which was the original purpose of a mixtape for those of you who don't know. Like it was basically like you put a song that you really like, and then you're like, yo, girl, I really like you. Another song. I'm thinking maybe next Tuesday we could go out or something. She never listened to that tape. She's like, oh, cool, thank you. So much plastic was wasted in my teenage years. But it's not something that's just for that. You make it so you can share your enjoyment of the music, the benefits you're gaining from the music with other people. It's a piece of your personality that you can give to somebody else so they can understand what you're all about and what you're doing. Occasionally, this is controversial, it is okay and even important to turn away from the keyboard and go do other things. Why not take a music break? Note, this is the face that some people make when they code. Not me, man. This is, for those of you not inundated with music terminology, this is what they call a hot face. You will see most guitarists have a hot face. Most people do not know that they are doing it when they're doing it. I found out about my hot face from my wife shortly before we were married. She came to see me play at a show, and she was like, "What are you doing with your face, and why are you so mad?" I'm like, "Not mad, I'm having the time of my life." She's like, "No, look at this picture I took." I'm like, yeah, I can see why you might think I was mad. But beyond the inherent benefit that takes place for taking breaks in general, like, burnout being kind of a big deal in our industry, taking some time out during the day to practice an instrument and explore new music is a great way to kill off break time. You've been coding for an hour, take 10 minutes, pick up a guitar. I don't care if you don't know how to play it. That doesn't matter. Fiddle around with it, see what sounds you can make. Just take 10 minutes. You'll feel better. You'll be able to go back, and maybe it helps you think about what you're doing, like taking a shower. Also, take a lesson. Learn to play something to help take your mind off coding. Bring back an interesting perspective from the music world. Just be like, oh man, I never realized that waltzes are always in 3/3 time. What if we started dividing our app up into thirds? Is that a good way to examine microservices? Maybe. But learning to play an instrument really brings out more of that mathematical understanding that we've already abstracted away and built into the code that we're writing. Instrument lessons also tend to be in standard forms of music. So many of this is not something you're going to be familiar with right away. If you decide to pick up the guitar, learn classical guitar. Don't learn rock guitar. Learn classical guitar. It's a totally different way of thinking, and your hands will be doing something that is actually really good for them, which it prevents a little physical thing. So maybe Don Campbell was right. Maybe music does in fact heal, or at least help with carpal tunnel syndrome. If all else fails, make your own music. It'll be easily more familiar if you actually have learned an instrument and you know what you're doing to start making things that make sense. It's also well known that performing music directly helps with math and coding skills. They've measured this in children, teens, and adults. They go hand in hand. Again, music essentially being mathematics in a different language. Or you can look up videos from RailsConf in like 2011 when we decided to have a band for some reason. You can also, if you don't want to pick up an instrument, why not do it with code? Why not use this newly expanded cognitive ability that you've gained from music to actually use code to build it? So this is a picture taken by my friend Konstantin Haase, who's the maintainer of Sinatra, which is a Ruby framework. And it shows the band Moz Shadow, who is a band that was created strictly for the Rails Israel set of conferences. And in it you see Boris, and Boris plays the accordion. If you've never played an instrument, don't start there. It's very confusing. And the other person in the picture is Jan. And Jan uses JavaScript and actually live codes to create music. He starts with a beat, he adds tones, they generate music through his laptop, and Boris plays along the accordion. They are a standing band. And they use a projector to show what Jan is live coding so you can learn the code that he's writing and watch it happen. It's kind of an amazing experience. And you can understand how to build fat beats. None of this is gonna happen overnight. Not every piece of music is perfect for everyone. It's going to take some time. There's no catch-all answer. There's no golden hammer to what is the right music to make me have a cognitive boost, become a better programmer. You will need to explore some things and eventually find what the best music is for you to unlock your code better. And that's just to get you started. It's a constant exploration, but God, it's fun. You learn about so much music that you like and also a lot about music that you don't like that will make you actually hate things. But that's okay. Hate is not an evil emotion. It's just an understanding of how you view the world. And that gives you a better cognitive space to work with the spatial reasoning. Once you find that right groove, it'll be possible to stay with it and explore music more and expand those cognitive abilities further. Fun fact, this is the first image generated by AI that I've ever used in a talk. The prompt was a rapper, pop singer, punk rocker, country artist, jazz drummer, all playing instruments together. I don't feel like I got that. But it's definitely interesting. Super weird. So while I'm giving this presentation, I've just scratched the surface. There are people out there that are so much smarter than me. This was my senior thesis in college, which was for my anthropology degree, not my CS degree. But I tried to do both. I was trying to do like a little catch-all thing where I took care of both assignments at the same time. But there's a lot of information out there about this. There's a lot of information that says, no, that's not a thing. There's still a lot of argument about how much benefit you get. Generally, they say 8 to 10 IQ points, and don't get hung up on the IQ points thing. It's not like taking an IQ test. It's a different, spatial reasoning is a different measurement of your cognitive ability, but IQ is the language they use to use it. Please feel free to hit up some of these resources if you're interested in learning more. This is just a handful. Like I said, there's so much more out there. I'm happy to talk music, cognitive development, and code anytime you want. And with that, thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
There was a question if you heard of everynoise.com.
Everynoise.com, yes. That can be a fun exploration. Have I heard of everynoise.com? Yes. I do not recommend listening to that at full blast, but it is definitely an interesting exploration of sound and what sounds can do for you. It's actually how my wife discovered that she sleeps really well, not to white noise, but a thing called pink noise. Does anyone know what pink noise is? Pink noise is the sound airplanes make when you're in them. So I have this fear that from now on when we fly, she's gonna just fall asleep the whole time. And like, then my arm will fall asleep because she'll be right there. But no, yeah, everynoise.com is a fantastic website.
There's another question. Are there any tools to track productivity by genre that can interface with Spotify?
That's a great question. Are there any tools to interface with Spotify to track productivity by genre? Not that I'm aware of, but I will say that at developer.spotify.com, we have over 500,000 developers building apps every day. So there is a chance that if you check out the community area, that you might find some things that are interesting. We just relaunched the site, so soon we're gonna be adding back the Discover area, which will allow you to find things like that might actually be somewhere where you can go to your boss and be like, so if you pay for my Spotify, I will be more productive. I get it for free as an employee, great perk. Any other questions? All right, I'm assuming because of these lights that there's still people here because I could kind of hear you laughing and drinking things. Thank you so much for coming to my talk. I'm happy to entertain any questions off mic if you'd prefer. Thank you so much, Star Trek, for having me. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and go enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.